This morning, you sent a message, maybe to someone in another country. It arrived in less than a second, and you didn't think about it once. But that message did not travel through the air. It went to the bottom of the ocean, through a wire. And right now, this video is doing exactly the same thing. Think about everything you did online in the last 24 hours. The call with someone abroad, the payment that cleared instantly, the video that loaded before you finished sitting down. We use one word for all of it: wireless, Wi-Fi, the cloud, 5G. Everything about the modern internet is sold to you as invisible, weightless, floating somewhere above your head. Satellites probably, space somehow. Almost none of that is true. The wireless part of your internet is the last few meters, from your router to your hand. Everything beyond that is physical. It has weight. It has a location. You could touch it, and nearly all of it is lying in the dark at the bottom of the sea. About 99% of all data that crosses oceans, every international message, transaction, and video stream, travels through cables on the seafloor. Not satellites, cables, a few hundred of them, connecting every continent except Antarctica. Remove them, and the global internet doesn't slow down. It stops. So, what is this thing the entire modern world runs on? In deep water, it's about as thick as a garden hose. That's not a metaphor. The cable that carries an ocean's worth of data is something you could wrap your hand around. Inside all that armor and insulation, the part doing the actual work is a bundle of glass fibers, each one thinner than a human hair. Your messages travel through them as pulses of light, racing along at around 200,000 kilometers per second. Laying one is a brutal, slow business. A specialized ship carries thousands of kilometers of cable coiled in its belly and pays it out across the ocean for weeks, sometimes months. Near the coast, the cable is buried in the seabed for protection. But in the deep ocean, past the continental shelf, burying is impossible, so they don't. The cable is simply laid on the bottom, across plains and trenches and underwater mountain ranges, and left there, alone, in the dark. For 25 years. None of this is new, by the way. And that's what makes it stranger. The first cable across the Atlantic was laid in 1858, when the fastest message between London and New York was a 10-day boat ride. Suddenly, a telegram crossed in minutes, and newspapers called it the wonder of the age. That first cable died within weeks. But the idea never did. For over 160 years, through telegraph, telephone, and now light, we have been solving intercontinental communication the exact same way. Drop a wire in the ocean. Your fiber optic cable follows the logic, and often nearly the route, of a Victorian telegraph line. There's a detail here most people never hear. Light fades. Send a laser pulse down a glass fiber, and after about 70 kilometers, it's too weak to read. So, every modern ocean cable has amplifiers built into it. Small sealed cylinders spliced into the line every so often, boosting the light onward all the way across. And those amplifiers need electricity, which means these cables aren't just carrying your data. They're carrying thousands of volts fed from the shore, running along the ocean floor for thousands of kilometers. The internet isn't only lying at the bottom of the sea, it's plugged in down there. And the capacity is absurd. A single modern cable can carry the traffic of entire countries, millions of people streaming video at the same time, through something the width of a hose. That efficiency is exactly why the world stopped building alternatives. Why would you? It works, it's cheap, until the day the hose meets an anchor. And where does a cable come ashore? Not at a fortress, at something called a landing station. And most of them look like a small warehouse or a beach hut with air conditioning. Some of the most important buildings on Earth are protected by a fence and a camera. The beach above a cable often has nothing but a small warning sign for fishermen. The internet's front door is, in many places, just a door. Now here's where this stops being a piece of engineering trivia and starts being a problem that involves you. Because your first instinct is probably the same as everyone's. So what? We have satellites now. If the cables fail, surely everything just goes to space. It doesn't. Satellites carry only a tiny sliver of international traffic. The leftovers, ships, planes, remote villages, battlefields. For everything else, they lose to the cable on every measure that matters: capacity, cost, and speed. Even the newest satellite constellations add up to a fraction of what a handful of cables move. And where do those satellite networks send your data the moment it touches the ground? Into the same submarine cables as everyone else. Space is not a backup for the seabed. Space is a customer of the seabed. And while nobody was watching, the ownership changed. For most of history, these cables belonged to telecom consortiums, clubs of national carriers sharing the cost. Not anymore. The biggest buyers and builders of new ocean cables today are a handful of American tech giants, the same companies behind your search engine, your social feed, your cloud storage. They got tired of renting the ocean floor, so they started buying it, which means the physical route your data takes between continents is, increasingly, a private road. The most important infrastructure on Earth. And there was never a vote, never a headline, never a moment where anyone asked you. It just quietly became someone's property. Because these cables are not spread evenly around the planet, they follow the cheapest, shortest routes, which means they bunch together into corridors, and corridors create choke points. The most extreme one sits between Europe and Asia. An enormous share of the traffic between those two regions squeezes through the narrow waters of the Red Sea and comes ashore in Egypt, following almost the same paths ships have used for centuries. Different cables owned by different companies, from different countries, lying within a few kilometers of each other. Damage that one corridor and you don't cut one connection. You wound a continent's internet. Now, in fairness, the system has a defense. And it's the reason you've never noticed any of this. Redundancy. When one cable breaks, your data doesn't stop. It reroutes automatically onto other cables, usually in milliseconds. On a normal day, the network absorbs a cut the way a motorway absorbs a closed lane. But choke points defeat redundancy, because rerouting only works if the other routes weren't lying in the same trench. When several cables share one corridor, one event can take them down together, and suddenly there's nowhere to reroute to. The closed lane becomes a closed motorway. That's the quiet flaw in the whole design. When several cables share one corridor, one event can take them down together, and suddenly there's nowhere to reroute to. The closed lane becomes a closed motorway. That's the quiet flaw in the whole design. The culprit usually isn't a shark or a submarine or sabotage. It's us. Fishing gear dragged across the seabed. Ships dropping anchor in the wrong place. And damage happens constantly. This is the part almost nobody knows. Globally, submarine cables are damaged roughly 100 times every year, about 2 faults a week somewhere on Earth. One anchor, dragged by one ship in a storm, can slice through the data lifeline of an entire region. And the crew might not even notice they've done it. So, who fixes them? Here's the number that should genuinely unsettle you. The global fleet of ships capable of repairing submarine cables is only around 60 vessels. 60, for the whole planet and every ocean on it. Many of them are decades old. When a cable breaks, one of these ships has to sail to the middle of the sea, hook the broken cable off the bottom, haul it up, and splice glass fibers together by hand. It routinely takes weeks. Now imagine several breaks at once in different oceans. There is a queue. Your country can be in it. This is not a hypothetical. In January 2022, an underwater volcano erupted near the Pacific nation of Tonga. It was one of the most violent eruptions ever recorded by modern instruments, and Tonga had exactly one international cable. The eruption severed it. In minutes, a nation of over 100,000 people essentially vanished from the internet. Families abroad couldn't find out who had survived the eruption and the tsunami that followed. Money transfers from relatives overseas, a huge part of Tonga's economy, stopped. Businesses couldn't process payments. The government struggled to coordinate disaster relief for the exact disaster that had caused the blackout. A trickle of satellite bandwidth became the entire country's connection to Earth, rationed like water. And the repair ship? It had to come from another country, over 4,000 kilometers away. The cable took about 5 weeks to fix. 5 weeks for a repair the modern world assumes takes 5 minutes, because we've never had to think about it. And Tonga is only the cleanest example. An earthquake off Taiwan once snapped multiple cables at the same time and crippled internet access across parts of Asia for weeks. In recent years, cables in the Baltic and the Red Sea have been damaged in incidents where the word accident now comes with a question mark, because governments have noticed what you're noticing right now. This is the softest, most exposed critical infrastructure on the planet. So, let's stop talking about Tonga. Let's talk about your Tuesday. A major cable corridor serving your region gets hit. A dragged anchor, a quake, or something deliberate. Traffic instantly crowds onto the surviving routes, and everything gets slower at exactly the moment everyone is trying to reach everyone. Your video calls fail first. Then the invisible stuff starts breaking. That card payment you make without thinking? For many banks, it touches data centers in other countries before it approves. Your money doesn't stop existing. Your ability to move it does. And here's how that spirals. When digital payments wobble, everyone has the same idea at the same time, cash. Businesses that live on real-time systems start improvising like it's decades ago. None of this needs the internet to fully die. It only needs it to become unreliable. And the repair ship, 3 weeks away. Everything in your life was built on the assumption that it never, ever would be. Here's the thing I want you to take away from this. We named it the cloud, and it was the most misleading name we ever gave anything. The internet is not above you, it's below you. It's not weightless, it's thousands of tons of steel and glass. It's not everywhere, it's in a few hundred specific places, following routes old enough that some of them shadow the telegraph lines of the 1800s. The most connected civilization in history runs on a hose at the bottom of the sea, watched over by 60 ships. Tonight, when you send that last message before you sleep, it won't disappear into the air. It will dive to the ocean floor, cross a mountain range in the dark, and rise out of the water on a beach on the other side of the world. It was never a cloud, it was always an anchor line, and now you know what it's tied to. If you enjoyed this, hit subscribe. There's more where that came from.